Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. However, wherever, whenever you're listening, this is the Root for Wisconsin Show, episode 136, coming at you from the Riverwood Gallery Studio in De Pere, Wisconsin. I'm host, producer, the Big E, Eric Fisher. Joining me this week, we have Dylan Tritt. Dylan, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
Fantastic. Glad to be here. Sean could not make it. He was slated for this episode, but due to technological issues, specifically his internet went out. He is not able to join. Maybe Secretary Shauna joining a little bit later, but as of right now, it is just me and Dylan. We do have some participation from Ramsey, so I will lead with that as well. So we have 4 members, kind of, potentially participating in the episode of the Root for Wisconsin Show. So first and foremost, I don't know if anybody saw on our social media pages, but I do want to issue a big thank you to the people who did take the time to listen over the last year, specifically, and I don't know any names, but the 23 people who made us one of their top 10 podcasts on Spotify, the 17 who had us in the top 5, and the 4 who had us in as their top podcast, which one of them was not me. I was pretty peeved about that. It was actually my number 2. Shauna said it was her number 1, so she is one of our 4. So we have to find the other 3. So if you're listening, shoot us a message. I want to find out that other 3. With that said, let's talk some business. As always, we got to talk about our friends over at RPW Raging Pro Wrestling. Next event coming up at February 10th at the Watering Hole in Green Bay. Tickets are available for that. You can also sponsor a wrestler for that event. So for that information, go to the RPW social media pages, Raging Pro Wrestling on Facebook and Instagram. So be sure to check them out and get ticket information there as well. Also available at the Watering Hole and Look Sharp in the Fox River Mall for those tickets. Also got to shout out our friends over at Raise Energy Repsports.com. Code ROOT4, ROOT, number 4, gets you 50% off of any order. And that's code ROOT4, ROOT, and the number 4. With that, Dylan, we dive into the episode, and generally speaking, this is where we would do our Root 4. In light of Thanksgiving and having 2 weeks off, I kind of want to go a different route here with this question. And you can feel free to answer this any way that you would like to. Mm-hmm. Completely up to you. So, but kind of the way I was thinking, with the holiday of Thanksgiving and with Christmas coming up as well, I want to ask you one moment that you are thankful, sports moment that you are thankful that you got to watch, either seeing in person, participating in, watching on TV. If you have more than one, awesome. So I really want to hear your answer on this because I have a couple lined up here as well.
Yeah, I have a couple. I think the earliest one that I can remember would have been, at least as far as a huge moment, was the Packers' most recent Super Bowl victory. I think that's a pretty common answer. Probably one of yours as well.
Yeah, it is.
I was a sophomore in high school, I think.
You would have maybe I was a freshman. This is one of those dumb things I remember, and I'm just going to put it out there like this. So our school in Gillette had this uncanny ability for probably about 4 or 5 years or something. You know, there was always some sort of and very typical in high schools, but like a bomb threat or something that was never going to actually come to fruition. Mm-hmm. It was always very amplified in Gillette because there's only 100-some people in the high school.
Right.
So it was a very big precaution, and you got the option if you want to go to school or not. We actually had a basketball game that night, and our coach said he preferred all of us to be in school, but if we didn't, he'd understand because he can't make us be there. And it was a very relaxed day because, as most people would guess, if a 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old had to not be in school, their odds are not going to be.
Yeah.
And so I very vividly remember this because of that I was one of the people, I'm like, well, I got nothing else better to do. I'm a freshman, and what else am I going to do? The bus leaves at like 3 o'clock because it was up in Niagara. Actually, 2:30. I think the bus left at 2:30 because that's an hour and a half drive from Gillette to Niagara. So we had to leave like incredibly early to get to there, to get to the school to load up for warm-ups and whatnot. And I very vividly remember the cafeteria made like a Packer-themed cake for lunch that day.
Very nice.
which again, it's stupid that I remember that, but that's just part of like the whole thing I remember. And then going up to Niagara, I think we won. I don't know if anyone's gonna call me on that. It was a JV game, so there's really no record of it. But I'm going to say I'm pretty sure we won. Because
we'll go with you won. We'll go with it.
Yeah, we'll go with it. So like I said, I remember that whole weekend, and I remember being at my aunt and uncle's house to watch that game. Huge family party, great time.
Yeah, we had obviously I was a sophomore in high school. We had one of my friend's parents had a Super Bowl watch party, and we had 4 or 5 different families with all of us, because they all had kids in the same class, obviously class of 2013. And I just remember I wasn't huge into football at that time, but I think that's what really pushed me to get more into football was watching that, because I'm like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
I think the next one, Wisconsin related, would be watching the Bucks win their first NBA title since '71. That's pretty exciting.
That's a good one.
Sitting at my friend Nick's bar, Willie Beeman's, with Mac. So that was good. It's kind of like, we weren't like pumped or anything. We were kind of just like, did we really just watch the Bucks win an NBA title? Yeah, we did. They started pouring out shots at the bar, and that was a good time. I wish I would have been at Pfizer for that.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna do? There's always more.
Right. If I remember correctly, you and I were looking into going that day too.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were not going to go to the game itself because tickets were, hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Mm-hmm.
But that we had thought about going down to watch outside in the Deer District, and just it didn't end up coming to fruition for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I think with work and whatnot, and having not probably getting back till 1 or 2 in the morning, kind of sullied us on that. But
such is life.
Yeah.
And then 2 other non-Wisconsin sports related moments that I definitely am glad I was able to watch was 2016 NBA Finals. Cavs come back from down 3-1 to the 73-9 Warriors. Watched all those games at Wedgwood and Omro. It was just disbelief there.
Yeah, I'll touch base on that one too, and that was one of the ones that I had thought of, and actually that's just kind of one of those that I don't think Ramsey had typed out, but in Ramsey's answers he had mentioned that one as well. I had thought of that one because of him. Him and I watched Game 7 together. I very vividly remember coming down to his old place on the far side of the pier, and watching that there and losing our absolute minds when that game was happening, and just being in utter, in the best way, the utter shock of when LeBron goes to the line to really put the game away, and Kyrie playing such huge minutes, getting that step back 3 and then the LeBron block chase down was just 2 of those that always stick out for me as well.
Yeah, I just remember, I can't remember who drove. Someone drove from the right, and LeBron cut over the free throw line from the left, and he got the pass, went up 1 step, and was in air. He was about to throw it down over Draymond Green. He got fouled hard. That's when he hit the 1 of 2 free throws. And I just remember, as soon as he went in the air, I was watching with some of my friends from high school, and we both kind of just jumped up in the air. We were ready for him to throw it down, and he got fouled pretty hard, missed the dunk, and then went down, hurt his wrist. We went from here to here.
Right. Right.
And then they pulled it off, and just unbelievable comeback.
And that first 3 that Curry launches up misses. You're sitting there like, no fouls, no fouls. You're only up 4. Curry launches one up. Kevin Love, of all people, defending him. And you're just waiting for a 4-point play. Because why not? It's Steph Curry. If anyone's going to do it, that's who's going to do it. And so, yeah, that was definitely one of those. And what's your last one?
My last one would be watching LeBron break Kareem's all-time scoring record and continuing to build on him. He's over 39,000 now. He's on pace to hit 40 sometime this season, which is crazy. They've been talking for the last, since Kareem has had that record, that it was going to be unbreakable.
Right.
And we watched it get broken, and we're not only watching it get broke, we're watching it get absolutely destroyed.
Right. And it probably, we always say this is very cliche in sports, but this is one of those that likely won't be broken either. At least not for quite some time.
Right. I mean, there's been some absolutely fantastic scores in the game of basketball, but you're going to have somebody who's averaging, what's LeBron average, 27 and a half?
Yeah, he's in here, year 21, playing at age 38, 39?
He'll be 39 in December, yeah.
Yeah, so he's going to be his age 39 season and still scoring about 27, 28 a game, which is unheard of. I mean,
yeah.
I think the average scoring points per game when you're above 35 is I think before LeBron it was maybe in the teens.
Not very high, not close to what he's averaging. I think he's at 20. I think he might be at 26.8, 26.7 for the season.
Let me check that as we speak here. LeBron's at 25-1.
25-1, okay.
For the season through 17 games, but still, again, just absolutely incredible.
Shooting 56%, if I may add.
Right, absolutely.
The most efficient shooting percentage of the season. So circling back to what I was saying is, he came in the league at 18, and he was immediately, I think he averaged 20 a game his rookie season, and then it just kept going up and up and up. But you're going to have somebody who's averaging, for his career, he's 27 something. You're going to have to average 27 points a game for, at minimum, 21 seasons.
Right.
I just don't see that ever happening.
No, and I know that we're in the age of load management, whatnot in the NBA, but for how many years the guy was playing 81, 82, 79 games a year? I mean, up until 2-3 years ago, the guy wasn't hurt.
No.
And he was also, you got to remember how there was a span of 8 years in a row where he played in the finals every year?
8 straight.
And so 8 straight years
finals
where you're playing from October to end of June, not count, and that's just regular season.
Mm-hmm.
So you're talking September, you're in camp. So you're playing 9 months straight at a high level for 8 straight years.
Some of the highest levels that's ever been played.
That's not counting Olympics. That's not counting the FIBA World Cups that he's played in as well. I mean, you could argue that for the better part of, he's been in the league 21 years, probably for the better part of 15 of those, he's played 9, almost 10 straight months.
Mm-hmm.
And then played, at least 3/4 of a year. That's insane.
Another part of it that is just going to exacerbate this scoring record is his consecutive games scoring in double digits, over 10 points. He is, he's well over 1,000 games straight.
Sure.
Which is, I think Michael Jordan has the second longest streak at maybe 900 something.
Right.
I'm sorry, Michael Jordan is 866.
Wow.
866. And as of the most recent article I can find on it, this one says May of this year, he was at 1,151.
And I think we can add, they played 17 games this season, including they're playing tonight, so make it 18, I believe, because I don't think the stats count for tonight yet. So add 18 to that because he's got 25 tonight.
Right. I believe the longest active streak is Joel Embiid with just over 100.
Jesus.
So it's just not going to – it's another thing that's not going to get broken.
That's another one of those things where on top of night in, night out scoring, you also have to, again, I talked about the longevity, the durability, the health, where you're not getting hurt the first or second quarter. So, I mean, that's a lot of luck, too. Don't get me wrong.
Right. Right.
Because it's it's easy to play, or I shouldn't say it's easy to play 81 games or 82 games, but it's, for conversational sake, easy to play 82 games, and if you roll an ankle in the first quarter of a game on a Tuesday, you're not playing again until Saturday. You can realistically probably play that Saturday, but you sit out that Tuesday night. If you do it like the first or second quarter, I mean, that's again avoiding that kind of luck too. My moments, a lot of them you said, and I know I've touched base on a lot of these here too. I did want to add in the Brewers 2011 season, because at that point, 2008 was fun, but the Brewers, they won one playoff game in 2008, and that was their first time since 1982 making the playoffs, which was, again, incredible. I don't want to take that for granted whatsoever. 26 years of not making the playoffs, which is a year shy of what I've been alive now. So that's would have basically been my whole life, not making the playoffs. And 2008, so they make the playoffs, all, very fun, whatever. But 2011 was kind of one of those moments where you got to really see a Brewers team dominate. Now, 2008, again, like I said, it was fun. You had a lot of pieces of the kind of the next generation of Brewers baseball that were kind of coming into their own. Ryan Braun was coming off a Rookie of the Year type season. Prince Fielder was still performing at a very high level, and kind of just getting into his peak, I would say. You had, Ben Sheets and Giovanni Gallardo playing at very high levels. A couple of, just a number of other names. You get CeCe Sabathia, again, that was cool. That was incredible, because the Brewers just didn't get guys like that. And granted, it was only for 4 months. And I did actually get to go to a CeCe Sabathia start with the Brewers, which was electric. That season was special. But 2011 was the prime of a lot of these guys. I'm talking like you got Ryan Braun in an MVP type season. Or actually, not even MVP season. Ryan Braun played an MVP season that year. Prince Fielder probably could have gotten, I believe he was third place in MVP voting, if not like fourth. Because I think that year it was Ryan Braun, Matt Kemp were the two finalists, or the two, 1 and 2. But you had guys like, you had Zach Greinke, who again was one of those acquisitions the Brewers made that you didn't see a lot of prior to that point. He was an offseason acquisition, so they did have him for the full year, so that was a little bit different than the CeCe trade. But you had a whole culmination, and then on top of it, you had the folk hero. Like, every good baseball team needs a guy who is like a journeyman who just kind of clicks together for a few months and has like their career made in that time. And that season, it was Nyjer Morgan, a.k.a. Tony Plush. And the guy just lived for walk-offs, including Game 5 of the 2011 NLDS against the Diamondbacks, where he actually singled in Carlos Gomez to advance the NLCS. And, yeah, the Brewers did fall short. They lost in Game 6 or 7 of that NLCS against the Cardinals, who'd go on to win the World Series. But just one of those times where it was like, holy shit, like, this is what you want as a baseball fan. Like, you have an MVP, you have a great pitching staff. Like, again, just incredible. It was like a 1-year spark that really didn't happen again until 2017, 2018. And now we've had a huge, this burst of Brewers baseball. So those were my big moments. Ramsey added in that he is thankful that he got to see Aaron Rodgers' last win at Lambeau Field, which took place against Minnesota Vikings last season. Myself and Shauna were there as well as Sean and our buddy Armando. So I would be willing to bet that is one of theirs as well, kind of looking back at the historic career. That's one that you always get to say you were at. Shauna says no. Shauna says she's not thankful that she was there for that game, but she's also a hater. Her list.
Yeah, she's a hater.
She said the Super Bowl is one of hers, so that 2011 Super Bowl we had touched on, as well as Aaron Rodgers leaving Green Bay. So she wanted to throw that in there. And then she did also mention the 3 MVPs of Wisconsin at the same time. We had Giannis, Yelich, and Aaron Rodgers. So she did add that in as well. So ironically, 2 of her 3 moments mention Aaron Rodgers being great, and then one of hers is saying bye to Aaron Rodgers.
One's just hating. She's just hating.
I know, but it is what it is. So that's the thankful part. So the other part of this question, so here's where we usually do the noogies, our negatives. And there is a noogie worth mentioning here, and that's the NFL on Fox for not having a turkey leg for Jordan Love.
Yeah.
They claim that they did not plan to do one. There's been rumors that Greg Olsen ate the one, and the broadcast crew ate the one that was meant for the Packers because they usually would cook 2. Greg Olsen refuted that immediately, saying that there's always one for the broadcast booth, which would have just left the one for the Lions that had the Lions logo seared into it. My question, and I know the Packers were like a huge underdog in that game. I think they were like a 4-point underdog in that game. So or 3-point underdog. So for what it's worth, you don't necessarily expect Green Bay to win that game. Mm-hmm. No, 6.5. I take that back. It was 6.5. So you're a full touchdown. So I understand that they're an underdog. I don't want to, we'll get into that.
Mm-hmm.
But for simplicity's sake, if you're only going to make 2, why would you not? I mean, the turkeys have 2 legs. Like, why would you not sear one, Lions logo, sear one, Packers logo, and then you still have your Fox Sports one for the broadcast team? Somebody dropped a ball somewhere.
Yeah.
And it didn't have to be. They didn't have to. And maybe, Greg Olsen's just kind of deflecting, and maybe he did, accidentally rip the one that was meant for the Packers if they were to win. But again, like I said, how do you not just have that in mind? In the back of your head saying, okay, let's make this as simple as possible. We'll have one for the game, no matter what. It'll be Lions or Packers.
Do they make them ahead of time? I'm sure they make the turkeys ahead of time, but do they sear the logos in ahead of time?
I would have to assume so.
Yeah, I would think so too. Because I mean, we never trailed that game, so it's not like they're not watching the game. By halftime, it was 23-6. You can't go like, oh, Green Bay's up 23-6, but we're still going to sear the Lions logo into it. So
right.
It leads me to believe they do it ahead of time, which, back to your point, nothing's guaranteed. So why don't, even if you have an extra turkey, that one has Lions on both sides and one has Packers on both sides, and whatever the Packers lose, you donate it to a local food shelter or something, whatever.
Well, like I said, let's not overcomplicate this even. Let's put one leg on each set, because you're only giving the leg for like the player of the game.
Well, right.
Like let's keep this as simple as possible to avoid any confusion, screw ups, whatever. Like again, like that's where I'm lost on this. But I digress.
Yeah, I got nothing. Nothing.
That's the easy topic. But so anyway, the question I had for this one, and I was kind of struggling with my answer for this. I had a couple in mind for this one as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the question I had on this one kind of goes back to this weekend as well. So for those of you who didn't see, there's a different one every year, but the Alabama Crimson Tide football team beat Auburn on a last-second 4th and goal from the 31-yard line on a touchdown. And after the game, one of probably the biggest rivalries in college football, which is Alabama-Auburn. Even when neither team is, when both teams are good, which is very few and far between, when only one team is good, it's always a great rivalry game. It's very rarely a blowout. And it's within the state of Alabama, there's no pro team really to track. So really, this is end all be all for Alabama State football fan or state of Alabama football fans. So after the game, they showed a number of the students and fans in the game on the Auburn side, because it was at Auburn, crying. And yeah, the internet, makes their jokes and it's all, all good. I'd be disappointed if they didn't. But my takeaway, there was one person who said, how does sports make somebody feel like this? It's a game. You're not playing in it. How does it make you feel like that? And I'm sitting there, well, I feel like it's a great question to explore because sports for a lot, I mean, it's an escape from reality for even a couple hours. It's, you bring a lot of emotion into it. And you can experience, we just talked about some of those incredible moments that actually left us speechless. So in kind of a different question, instead of a noogie, because I'm not roasting those fans. Yeah, it's kind of funny being caught on national TV, bawling your eyes out when you're not playing. But because it is such an emotional thing, I kind of wanted to ask the question of what is a moment in sports what really made you realize that you love sports and what gives you that emotion? Ramsey actually answered this one as well right away, and this is one that I didn't really think of, but it really, looking back, I got to give him credit for this one. It says he remembers watching Brett Favre play the Raiders after his dad passed away back in 03. Would have been 7 years old. And looking back, I think that is one of those moments where you realize it's not just a game. It's so much bigger. It's, again, you talk about the escape from reality for 3.5 hours. Everyone was rooting for Brett Favre. I mean, these receivers are going up and catching balls that had no business being caught. All the Raiders to that point, and really to this point still, have been one of the most hostile environments to go play into, and it was all love for Favre and everything that kind of goes with that. And so that's one of those moments that again actually stuck out to me too. Is holy shit, this isn't just, well, as much of a 7-year-old can say holy shit, but holy shit, this is not just not just a game. This means so much more than just a win or a loss. Another one that kind of comes to mind, there's so many of these, but another one of those that comes to mind is Dale Earnhardt Jr. winning the summer Pepsi 400 at Daytona 4 months after his dad passed away. That's one of those where it's that, again, very vividly sticks out in my mind. The only other one, so I kind of phrased this question as however you wanted to answer it. And when I asked you, because I asked you guys to do your homework for once, so we're actually kind of prepared. And I'm really bummed that Sean couldn't come on, because it sounded like he had some pretty good answers, but kind of a moment that you realize you love sports or that you wanted to be in sports media. And for me, the other side of that coin of when I wanted to be into sports media and talk about them and do this whole thing is I remember two things as a kid. I very vividly remember playing Madden, and if you play Madden, especially back in those days, nowadays you get a weekly update and they have some new commentary and all that. But if you remember those games back in 03, 04, 05,
Madden 05.
Once you got to a certain point, I mean, it was very stale the way it was because it was very phoned in, generic. But if you're playing franchise mode, which was always my favorite mode to play on those games, you get to a point where there's not really commentary. They don't even add it. They didn't even have. They didn't have the technology at the time to put it onto a game where they could have just generic name pronunciation and a huge storage space of information to pull from where you can kind of AI sentences together. Right. So if you're playing franchise mode after probably 2 seasons, there's no commentary. So I would always make my own, and I remember very vividly doing that. And then I also remember one of my friends, and I think he listens to the show, so I'm gonna give him a shout out. So Ty Pilot, who also went to Green Bay. He had gone to Gillette Elementary through, I believe, 3rd grade is when he and his family had moved. But again, one of those dumb things kids do. There was a time where I think we had football banned because we got too rough. So him and I remember we would sit on the swings and make our own sports radio show. And we would just talk about sports a couple times a week. So those are kind of those two kind of flashback moments where okay, this is always something that's meant that much. What do you got for this question?
The earliest stuff that I can think of was my dad was huge into NASCAR when I was a kid. And he would tape the race and he would watch it every Sunday night. And he would make a huge bowl of popcorn. He would melt some butter, cover it in butter, put some salt in there. And he had this huge bowl for him, and he had these little bowls for us,
Mm-hmm.
the kids. So we would all sit down, we would grab a bowl of popcorn, and we'd sit there and root for Jeff Gordon for however many laps the race was. As long as I can remember, it's just been Jeff Gordon, which is great. You know, I was never huge into watching NASCAR. I found it pretty boring, honestly, but
as most kids do.
Yeah, it was something to just sit and hang out with Dad, and watching him get either really happy or really not happy was like it's kind of like, yeah, this is what sports is. And then, you know, I started getting into it when I got a little older, watching some college basketball. Well, starting off going to our high school basketball games as a kid, watching those, going to the high school football games, watching those as a kid. You know, as a kid.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So every high school has this. Were you one of the kids that would sit in the bleachers all game, or were you causing trouble underneath the bleachers playing football, behind the bleachers or underneath the stands, whatever?
That's what I was just going to get at. When I was a kid, we were all off in the practice field playing our own football game. And that's all we were doing. And then at the end of the game, we'd come back because we didn't want to get lost. We wanted to go home. We didn't want to walk. So, yeah, those are probably my earliest sports moments. And then obviously, you know, when I was of age, mom and dad put me in sports, and it started off as basketball, which I played through college. Well, practice player through college, but through high school. Played football for a couple years, which wasn't really my thing. Switched over to soccer, ran track. And it's just the competitiveness, the drive to want to be better, the feeling you get when you win, when you go deep in the postseason.
Yeah, we never had that, but
yeah, we never did for soccer. Our conference had either the state champion, the state runner-up, or both. Most of my high school years. So basketball, we did well for ourselves. You know, track was nice because it's an individual sport. Most of it. I mean, you have your relays, but you're as good as you want to be, basically, when it comes to track and field. So the harder you work, as your success is dependent on you. You're not relying on a team.
Right.
You're just out there and you're giving it your all. And there's something to be said for that.
I want to add into, I mean, I remember very vividly, again, sitting with Dad on Sunday or Saturday night and watching different sporting events. Or one thing about baseball that was really cool, or that I really fell in love with baseball, is that because they play 162 games a year, they're on virtually every night during the summer. Yeah. Obviously, they have a couple off days. You know, there's an occasional Monday or Wednesday or Thursday as a travel day, whatever. But my dad worked a lot of like late nights and whatnot too, so he would come home just wanting to relax and have something on and hang out with us in a very relaxed environment. And that was one of those that I can very vividly point back to, is because there's always a baseball game on. You know, you throw that on and you kind of have it in the background as chit chat and stuff, or you pay attention for some big at bats or whatever. And that's just one of those. Again, that's probably the reason I fell in love with baseball. I also very vividly remember watching Monday Night Raw with my dad too. He wasn't a big SmackDown guy or anything like that, but Monday Night Raw, it was. My mom would always be in the living room watching some dumb show, probably like The Bachelor or something stupid.
Yeah, and then, some dumb mom show.
Yeah, some dumb mom show. No offense, Mom. I love you.
Yeah, no offense.
But she'd be in there watching The Bachelor. As we got older, Castle was a big one for her. She'd sit there and watch Castle. Then Dad and I would be in his bedroom. We'd be watching wrestling. And for so long, like I remember, you know, when you're a little kid, like you have bedtimes or whatever. So like, for a long time, it was okay. You get to watch the first hour, and then you graduate to the second hour. Now it's 3 hours every week, but like, and then like for Packer games, when the Packers would play Monday Night Football, we'd usually kind of flip back and forth between commercials or whatever. But when it was not the Packers, I could stay till halftime. When the Packers split, I could stay up to the end of the game. Like that's just again one of those dumb things I remember. Doing, but it's one of those you bond over that stuff, and then obviously, like you said, you play for the most part, I was actually one of the kids that sat in the bleachers the whole time during football games. Like, I did go off and wander around a little bit and, play under the bleachers and play our own games of football. I got a bloody nose one time, and I got piss pounded out of me by some, kid who's, 3 years older than me one night. And so that pretty much ended my...
Ended your under the bleachers career?
Well, it was just more fun because at the time, you kind of get a little bit older, probably 5th, 6th, 7th grade. You're kind of putting it all together, and you're learning the game, and you're playing on, for us it was Pop Warner from 4th to 6th grade. So you're already kind of into it, and you're kind of like, okay, they made a very big point of that we were going to have the same offense as the high school team. So you're kind of learning, and our teams at that point were actually pretty good. So I remember, there wasn't really not a point in, it was more fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
So those are kind of some of mine. Shauno added in that hers was watching football with her dad and her grandpa, and it was something that they just did, and it got her out of helping to do chores with the girls, and they had taught her everything she knew about football. So she started at a really young age, and now she's stuck with me where we watch football all day Sunday. So there are no chores.
Darn.
Except we do go grocery shopping, but that's really about it. So that's our spin on that for the week. So that is our unofficial noogie and root fors of the week, plus a bonus noogie as well, because something really stupid did happen. Our Wisconsin web story of the week. And, I really wasn't going to do one until I saw this happen early this week. And I didn't really even know this happened because it was before you and I were born.
Mm-hmm.
But in the 80s, specifically the 1988 season, during the Week 11 game, somebody released a turkey onto Lambeau Field. Somebody snuck a turkey in and released it on the field. And
that's hilarious.
Nobody knew who did it. It was never, brought forward until this last weekend. We're on ESPN Sunday NFL Countdown. They actually finally brought it up, and the person's identity was revealed as, officially speaking, any statute of limitations for any potential crime that could be involved in this have now passed. So I got the story. This is from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, so JSO Online. Christopher Coogan wrote this. So the mystery over why Jordan Love didn't receive a customary turkey leg after the Green Bay Packers carved up the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving Day continues. But another mystery involving a turkey at the Packers has been solved after being a cold case for 35 years. ESPN Sunday NFL Countdown today will dive into one of the greatest questions in Packers history. It has nothing to do with the debate on who the greatest quarterback to wear the green gold is. The show will finally answer to who the perpetrator was who released the turkey onto a Lambeau Field during a Packers game in 1988. If you don't remember, it does have a video of the turkey running around. So this was Week 11. Packers were playing the Indianapolis Colts November 13th, 1988. The Colts were facing a 3rd and 2 in the first half, closing in on scoring when a turkey made its way into the field. There's a turkey on the field, the announcer said, laughing. Packers fans are trying to gobble up a win, have sent a turkey onto the field. The Packers were 2-8 at that point, coming off back-to-back shutout losses, in which they were outscored by a combined 48-0. Was the turkey sending them a message? A young Bob Costas broke down the action for NBC Sports like he was taught it in broadcast school. Quote, a little episode in Green Bay, a fan looking to show his displeasure with the Packers brought a turkey to Lambeau Field, Costas said so calmly. The gobbler let loose, and now he's gobbling up yardage across midfield, makes a move to the sideline. He's too quick for Ron Hellstrom of the Packers, and he darts out of bounds to stop the clock. An amazing moment in Green Bay, Costas added from the studio at the halftime of the game. The Packers would go on to lose that game as well, 20-13, on a chilly fall day to fall to 2-9 at the time, on their way to a 4-12 season, and last place in the NFL Central Division. The Colts even brought this memory back up in 2016 after another animal raced on the field for a Packers-Colts game at Lambeau. In 2016, it was a squirrel. I don't know if you remember that or not. I believe the Colts also won that game. But at the time, which again, this is wild. So at the time, 53,000 fans at Lambeau, which now you added on 30,000 since then, almost 40,000 seats since then.
Mm-hmm.
Don't likely remember much about the play on the field. Rather, it's the turkey that they remember all season. It's the most they cheered all season. And Hellstrom, who I just mentioned earlier, said that I'm sure that it was a disgruntled fan. A Packers offensive lineman said during the season, during an NFL Films story on the incident of the 30-year anniversary, maybe this is the message. You're just a bunch of turkeys. NFL Films featured Packers turkey story on the 30th year anniversary back in 2018 with former Wisconsin Governor Tommy Thompson. When NFL Films wrote their story, they pulled out all the stops to get the person responsible to come forward. They even had former Governor Tommy Thompson on telling the fan that they could no longer be arrested. That person should now come forward and relieve his conscience, Thompson said in a video on NFL Films. Bear his soul out there to the public. The statute of limitations has run. He cannot go to jail. He should come forward and confess. The Packers would like it. The police would like it. The fans would like it if this one individual would step forward and say, I'm guilty. I released the turkey. But he did not at the time. Until this year, Dylan, when Gary Susky is the person who released the turkey on a Lambeau Field. This person now feels that it is the right time to step up. The guilty party is Gary Susky, who was a Lambeau Field usher for more than 20 years. And it doesn't appear that he was a disgruntled fan, as Hellstrom may have thought. So why did his reasoning for his actions 35 years ago? He said, quote, we were sitting around talking sports. I said, it'd be nice for me to throw a turkey on that field. Susky said while dressed in a full Packers attire in his ESPN interview. They said, no way. And I said, I think I can do it. Where would I find a live turkey? A turkey farmer, of course. I said, let's go in the garage and get the wildest one you got. But he couldn't act alone. He had an accomplice, Trish Karowski, who was also interviewed for the Lambeau Field stands for the story. He wanted me to put it under my coat and walk in like I was pregnant. Karowski recalled, no. So what he did was apparently he hid the turkey in a box before hiding it in his coat on the way down to Lambeau Field to the front row railing. And during the 1988 game broadcast after the turkey was released, onto the field, the announcer pondered, how do you smuggle a turkey into the stadium? He arrived early with his plan in place and the turkey in the box. He then went into the bathroom stall to get the turkey out. Once he opened the box, the turkey began to fly away. What did he expect of the bird? Wings were going, but finally got it in my coat. Then at the end of the first quarter, he determined it was now or never. He said, I might as well do it. He said he waited for the cameras to pass, and then he went down to the railing, and he left it go. He said, turkey ran off 40 yards, biggest run of the day. Go, turkey, go. That's what Susky said to himself. Fans would soon name the bird Henrietta. ESPN story also included an interview with Brian Naring, the Packers' assistant equipment manager at the time, who helped guide the turkey off the field, describing it as a little Sunday stroll. The turkey was at the time then sent off to a Brown County reforestation camp, I should say, and was even pardoned by Thompson, then the governor, a couple weeks before Thanksgiving, as the incident gained a lot of attention. And that, again, aired on Sunday this last weekend. So incredible story.
That's awesome.
From the Green Bay Packers involving a turkey that's not about where Jordan Love's was.
Yeah. It's interesting because I don't know, he obviously had it in a box, but
right.
Can people just walk in Lambeau Field with big boxes? I mean, turkeys are small.
I'm sure back in 1988 you could.
Well, maybe. Apparently, yeah.
I mean, you got to think of how long ago that really was. I mean, obviously neither one of us were born. Justin's the only person on the show who I think was born, and he was probably still in diaper. No, he was older than that. He was probably in his teens. No, I'm kidding. I think he's only 10 years older than us. So, 88, he would have put him in, 2-3 years old or so.
Not old enough to remember a turkey running on Lambeau Field.
No, but, I mean, that's pre-9/11. I mean, you probably didn't even have metal detectors at the time. Just a turnstile, and as long as you can lift above that and you don't look like you're suspicious, I'm sure nobody questioned it. That's the thing.
Clearly
That's the weird thing. And I want to know how he kept the turkey quiet in that box. Like you said, A, it must have been a pretty big box. But B, you got to keep this thing quiet. You got to keep it from, rattling around.
Right.
That's the biggest mystery to me. And maybe it was in the video story, like the actual full interview, not just in the Journal Sentinel write-up of it. But that's the first thing I'd have to ask, is how did you keep it quiet, even if you get to the stadium early? So, I mean, I'm assuming, there probably wasn't as many festivities back in the day, so people were probably showing up 20, 30 minutes before kickoff, if that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's probably a lot of drinking anyway, so that's always probably been a thing. But, I mean, it's not like now where, people are probably tailgating all day and, whatever.
Not probably.
Yeah. But I would love to know how he kept it quiet, even if it's only for a quarter. I mean, that's a good half hour in the stands, which, at that time, even if the game's kind of getting out of hand, but there's still, there's music, there's a lot of, there's the PA voice, all that stuff. So I can kind of get how maybe during the game, but getting into the building, standing in line, that's my question. Not even the box. I don't give a shit about the box itself. I can wrap my mind around again. 1988, significantly less security to get into NFL stadiums, not really thought of as the way it is now, with as an attraction per se.
Right.
I can rationalize that. It's how did you keep the box quiet?
It's impressive, but it raises more questions than we have answers.
Right. So that's our Wisconsin Let's Start of the week. Maybe we can reach out to him, or maybe we just watch the video and maybe it's in there. I don't know.
Maybe.
All right. So moving on to the world of current sports, really not a whole lot going on in the world of baseball. Winter meetings are taking place for the Brewers. Really the only story of the Brewers, I mean, there's 1,000 trade rumors going around, especially regarding Corbin Burns, which until something happens, we'll talk about it then. Devin Williams was named NL reliever of the year, which makes the 5th out of the last 6 years the Brewers have had the pitcher, one of their pitchers named as the reliever of the year. Twice now for Devin Williams, and obviously the other 3 times for Josh Hader. So shout out to the Brewers pitching staff. And really the only other thing kind of coming out right now is that the Brewers may offer Jackson Chourio an astonishing contract extension prior to him ever playing in the MLB. And
pretty good job for him.
For his sake, I mean, I think the Brewers probably just being a little, you're kind of getting ahead of it. I feel like they've probably seen what they need to see at basically every level he's been at. The kid's I think he's 19 years old now, and he was in AAA this last season, with rumors of possibly being up for a September call-up. So the guy has proved it at all levels of minor league baseball. He's the number 2 prospect in all baseball. So I think, the rationale is the Brewers want to get out ahead of it, and instead of like a Juan Soto, who the Nationals had to let walk and now is a center of trade rumors again because of how rookie contracts are settled. And that's typically, teams like the Brewers aren't usually in position to do that, but if he's as good as you think he is or you want him to be, you kind of want to get out ahead of it, set this new standard for the market, while also probably getting a discount in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm. It would make sense.
I wanted to ask you, Dylan, as a non-baseball follower, how you feel just about the idea of possibly recreating the market for a player who's never played an inning at the major league level. And I don't know if you know anything about Jackson Chourio. Like I said, the guy is the number 2 prospect in all of baseball. He was signed by the Brewers, I believe, at 16 or 17 years old. Mm-hmm. He is, again, played at high levels at every level.
Well, to me, the first thing that sticks out, it says that the Brewers management is willing to take some risks. If you're going to be offering someone who has never even suited up for your professional team that kind of money, on one hand, I can say, what are you guys thinking? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, it's like you guys must have done your homework on this guy. And if you're willing to offer him that kind of money, you better rope him up quick.
Right. Well, and the odds are you're talking about a guy that you plan to build around. for
Right.
your next 15 years, basically. Jackson Chourio. So scouting grades are based out of 70. It's 1 to 70. Has a scouting grade of he hits 55, power 60, run 70, 45 arm, fielding 60, overall 65.
65 out of 70 is not bad.
Yeah, including a 70 grade steal or speed. Try to see if I can find some stats here on him. So for his minor league career, he's hitting 286 over all levels of minor league baseball. An on-base percentage of 347, over 272 games, so basically 2 seasons, or a little less than 2 full seasons of baseball. 1,000 at-bats, 312 hits, 63 of those being doubles, 9 of them triples, 47 home runs, 191 RBIs, 99 walks, 250 strikeouts, 68 stolen bases. Again, over the course of basically 2 seasons.
It's not bad.
No, not at all. The average, and the interesting thing, so again, kind of take this for what it's worth. Played in 122 games over the AA season this season at AA Huntsville, Biloxi, not Huntsville. Was Huntsville at one point, but played 122 games there, hit 280, 366 in 6 games, and again, these are very small numbers, so 6 games, hit 333 at the Nashville AAA level. Most recently in 2022, he went through Carolina, Wisconsin, and again, end of the year in Biloxi at the AA level, Carolina the low A, Wisconsin the high A. The odd part of this, so you look at combined, it was a 288 average. With Wisconsin, he only hit 252, but he also had 12 home runs over the course of 62 games. Excuse me, I had that wrong. My apologies. So he had 252, had 8 home runs over 31 games. So the average necessarily wasn't there at the Wisconsin Timber Rattlers level. Wisconsin's always been kind of a weird area for the Timber Rattlers for minor league baseball for a couple of reasons. A, the weather plays a huge impact on that. Now, Chourio was playing in the summer, so it's not like, usually the first 2 months of the season are very dominated by the pitchers. You see some very low batting averages. But the other side of it is you usually see a pretty big jump from single A to double A there. I mean, it's a stopping ground, but you also, you got guys who are just coming off of college seasons who end up playing at high A instead of playing at the rookie ball league or the low A level. So you kind of get guys who've been playing pretty much nonstop from January on. You get a very interesting level of talent, and then also, I mean, for my sake, I would argue that the Timber Rattlers Stadium at Fox City Stadium is a very pitcher-friendly park. It's a very deep park, not very hitter-friendly as a whole. So I think that kind of plays into it too, where a low average there isn't by any means like the end of the world, on top of all those other sides of it too. And again, you throw in the fact that this kid was 18 at the time.
Right. Can't even drink a beer legally.
There's a lot of things you can't do at 18 anymore.
Yeah.
Couldn't even get a pack of chew. Like, baseball is very commonly associated with that. Couldn't even get a can of dip if you wanted to. So that's really the only news. My take on it, just real quick, I'm kind of in the same boat as you on that. I think, you have to have a lot of confidence to do that. It's kind of, if you plan on building your future around this guy, which they seem, they want to, I don't blame them at all. You kind of, as the Milwaukee Brewers, you have to lock him up earlier than, like a re-sign deal, or not even get to the arbitration level. Because once you kind of get that, you tend to lose guys, and you have the risk of having to let him walk, like you're going to probably see here with Corbin Burns, or you have to either trade him or let him walk. They let Brandon Woodruff walk due to the injury situation.
Mm-hmm.
They are in that kind of same spot with Willie Adames. We've seen this happen time and time and time again with a number of these different players who come through Milwaukee, been really, really good on their rookie contract. Josh Hader's another one for that matter too, where you either have to make a decision, trade them or let them walk. And for a small market club, the Brewers are likely going to try to trade them a year too early instead of continuing to contend. So if you want to sign a guy for 10 years, say, hey, here's where you're going to be for 10 years. If this works out, great. If not, we tried. And you kind of reset the market for other top prospects too, so you're kind of getting more on the same playing field. And
Right.
if he pans out, then you're signing him a lot cheaper than you would have.
My only hope is that if they're going to do this, and they have a guy who think they can build a successful, if not championship roster around, that they just go all in on it,
Right.
rather than let's keep one foot out the door just in case.
Right.
No, just go all in. If you fail, you fail. Right? You haven't really succeeded in the last however long.
You've never won a World Series.
Ever.
You've been to one.
Yeah. So what have you got to lose? You're not. Are we the longest active baseball club without a? Or I'm sorry, are we the oldest baseball club without a World Series, or what is that?
I don't believe so. I'd have to look it up, but I believe there's one team that's been older than us that does not have a World Series title.
Well, okay, even if we're the second oldest, we're still not there. So if they want to and they like this kid, just go all in on it.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree, and that's kind of in that same conversation of, you gotta do something. And if this is a creative way to, again, in the grand scheme of things, save some money, and also not being that, because I don't know if you remember this, Dylan, but when we were in school, and I think I talked to you about this, with how those arbitration contracts work, a lot of teams will hold off calling a guy up until like May or June, so that they keep, for the games played, even if they play the rest of the season from that point, they cannot, they can't get a year of eligibility towards their arbitration. Mm-hmm. So with that in mind, this was a big thing when Chris Bryant was supposed to get called back up and kind of start with the Cubs when they made their World Series run, where they didn't want to call up Chris Bryant for whatever reason, well, not whatever reason, to avoid the arbitration year and whatnot too. So that's the route that they went. And ultimately, I mean, again, you kind of look stupid and you piss your player off. And again, that's a lot of teams doing that, but
mm-hmm.
The San Diego Padres are as old as the Brewers, technically, if you count the expansion year where the Seattle Pilots were a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But as the Milwaukee Brewers, they have 1 year on us. They have not won a World Series. The Mariners started in 1977, so they're kind of in that same ballpark. The Rays started in 1995. They've been to several since then, but have not won one. So we are the second oldest by my count, after the Texas Rangers finally won this year.
Yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking of.
So they were the third, I believe. I'd have to double check that. But they were the second or third then, and they're technically, for my sake, I think they're the second. I would give the Padres an extra year because they weren't really the Milwaukee Brewers. Like, I know it was the same ownership and shit, but
right,
I don't count it. The Rangers were 61, so they were the third.
Okay.
So, anyway, that's Brewers talk for the week. We move on to, real quickly here, the world of college football, where the Badgers are once again bowl eligible since the last time we recorded. At the time, we weren't sure if that was going to even happen.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, the Badgers have won 2 straight games. They beat Nebraska on a very chilly but beautiful Saturday night at Camp Randall, which I know I posted on our social media channels that Ramsey and I had gone. We found $9 tickets that day. It was and that includes ticket fees.
That's impressive.
And that surely came out of, so I decided to not do the typical Wisconsin thing, didn't have time to go deer hunting this year. So I was sitting at home. Shauna was on a girls' weekend with her mom and sisters, and it was about 2:25. I was playing Madden or something. And I'm like, oh, I wonder what time the Badgers got to be starting now because I didn't play at 11. And so I went to ESPN and found out that they did not. They played at 6:30. If you go to ESPN, you can find like the line, and it also shows tickets available. And they were like $4 or $5. I'm like, okay, those are probably nosebleeds, but I'll go click on it. And they were like lower level, corner of the end zone. I'm like, I'm going to this. I don't care who comes. I know I texted you. I texted Ramsey. I said, someone is coming with me to this because I'm not going to sit here all night, be alone, and do nothing when I could be in Madison for $9. So that's the extent of it. 72,000 people had the same idea as I did. The Badgers were a 7-point favorite into that game. They won by 7. It was ugly. It was in overtime, but it was a win.
Win's a win.
They clinched bowl eligibility that night. And then the following week, and probably most importantly, this last Saturday, the Badgers took home Paul Bunyan's axe after a 2-year hiatus, beating Minnesota 28-14 to clinch another winning season. I believe it's 22 straight winning seasons, which was actually in doubt last year. They had to win the bowl game to officially have that. They were 6-6 going into the bowl game. So to not have a losing record, they had to win the bowl game, which they did, obviously, get the streak going. And that has continued to this season as well. So they will officially be a winning program once again. Dylan, I did want to ask if, we await bowl season and what bowl the Badgers are going to be in. But I did want to ask your thoughts on the initial first year of the Luke Fickell era.
It seemed to me that he had there's a lot of hype around his first year. He came in with a lot of expectations. The fans, the Madison community as a whole had a lot of high expectations for him. And I don't want to necessarily say that he failed because, again, it's a first-year head coach. We finished 7-5. We're bowl eligible. It's probably not what everybody had in mind, but it could have been a lot worse.
Oh, absolutely. And to that element, I add in here too, yes, there was a lot of hype. I mean, the Badgers were, on paper, expected to contend for the Big Ten West, which would have been great. They ended up third in the Big Ten West, technically tied second, but Northwestern had a tiebreaker. Iowa, who faces Michigan this weekend, took home the Big Ten West after somehow going 10-2 all season, which is nothing short of. I mean, the only way to say that about that team is they won a lot of grueling games. I mean, they won this last week. They had previously had the over-under, like the lowest ever over-under since this was like a bettable stat. The previous week against Illinois, it was at 28.5, and they were under that. They won that 15-13. They scored even less points this last week. This last week, they won against against Nebraska, 13-10. At one point in that game, Dylan, they had an 11-play drive and still punted on their own side of the field.
Yeah, I did see that.
I mean, just again, a grueling. This is again a new low for an over/under. This is 25.5, and Iowa said bet.
We're going under.
They wanted the under. This week, just a real quick stat on this. This week, the over/under on the game for the Big Ten Championship against Michigan is 35.5. And Michigan is a 22-point favorite in that, which means that technically speaking, based on spread and over/under, that they are not even expecting Iowa to score a touchdown. Their over/under for points is 6.5. Which is an absolutely insane thing to me. Now, personally speaking, I'm saying bet the hell out of the under. Yeah, the over-under is 35.5 still. The line has moved to 21.5. I almost feel that Iowa can cover that. because surely for their defense and their clock management. Right. I'm not saying that they have any business winning this game. I don't expect them to.
No, I don't think anyone outside of Iowa really expects them to. I'm not even sure many people in Iowa expect them to, but there's just something about these big games, especially, this is a Big Ten championship game. Michigan is the number 2 team in the country right now, just coming off beating Ohio State. So Iowa's going to know it's time to show up, and if we don't show up, we're going to get embarrassed on a national stage, which Wisconsin is no stranger to, facing Ohio State in big games.
I gotta go through these because this just kills me. So, comparing the last 5 of these two teams, right?
Yep, I'm looking at it right now too.
Michigan is 5-0. Iowa is 4-1. Michigan's last 5 was 49-0 against Michigan State, 41-13 against Purdue, 24-15 against Penn State, 31-24 over Maryland, and 30-24 over Ohio State. In Iowa's last games, they had a 12-10 loss against Minnesota, a 10-7 win against Northwestern, a 22-0 win over Rutgers, a 15-13 win over Illinois, and 13-10 over Nebraska. For the season, Iowa's statistical leaders, their quarterback had 976 yards, which he was a backup. I want to give him credit for that. That was not their all-year starter. They had Caden McNamara, who transferred from Michigan. Mm-hmm. Their leading rusher had 779 yards. Their leading receiver had 299 yards and was their tight end. Their kicker on the season was 19 of 20 on extra points, 18 of 26 for field goals, and had a long of 53, scoring 73 points. Their punter, I don't have stats on the punter. I wish I did. ESPN let me down. But
I think the big stat here is in their team stats. Their points against, 12.2, 4th in the country.
That's insane.
Yeah.
They punted 80 times this season for 3,000 yards.
Jeez.
With an average of 44.5 yards per punt. That's insane.
It's honestly impressive.
Love that. This game is going to be one of the worst games. This game is probably going to set football back a good 20 years.
I'm gonna just go one step further on that points allowed per game. Iowa being 4th at 12.2. Third is Penn State at 11.4. Second is Ohio State at 11. And first, can you guess first?
In points allowed per game?
Points allowed per game.
Georgia.
No. Michigan.
Wow.
10.3. So here I am hyping up Iowa. They're 4th. Well, they're going against the best statistical defense in the country.
I don't think anyone's expecting them to score points. And I know that we talked about that in the over-under.
No.
But I am very much like, if this game, I am very much expecting this game to maybe be like 21-3 or something like that. Maybe 20-3 with like a couple field goals.
Yeah.
Now, there's also a chance that I could be dead wrong on this and that Iowa loses like 49-0. There is always that possibility.
You're going up against a Michigan team who is averaging 37.6 points per game, 13th in the country, allowing, again, 10.3 points per game, 1st in the country. I mean,
Penn State kicked the shit out of them back in the early part of the season, 31-0. I'm not sure if that was the game Caden McNamara got hurt. I feel like it might have been.
Potentially.
Yes, because Caden McNamara was 5 of 14 passing that game. And Deacon Hill had to come in. So, and then the following week, I believe that was.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he did still play the week after that, so maybe not. Either way, would I doubt it? But I got a feeling, like I said, I just have a feeling that somehow I was going to grind this thing out. It's going to be like a good old-fashioned, like, four corners basketball type situation.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
So going back to the Badgers, my bad, I got distracted. But going back to the Badgers, again, take home the axe. You won 2 of your 3 trophy games this season. Of course, the only one that you lost was to Iowa. I don't find this season to be as upsetting as a lot of people do.
No, I'd agree with that.
This season put in perspective how much the transfer portal doesn't matter for football. Basketball, you get one player in, that's a night and day different team.
Mm-hmm.
Hockey, you get a new coach, like the Badgers coaching staff is all different, a lot of holdovers. You get a new scheme, night and day difference.
Mm-hmm.
Football, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the Badgers, I can think of one wide receiver who didn't play a whole lot. Obviously, the quarterback who did, Tanner Mordecai, started and was hard to watch a lot. But you didn't really have a whole lot of turnover from the previous administration, which we've talked ad nauseum on this show about how Wisconsin football was regressing under Paul Chryst, and for that matter, Jim Leonhard too. Do I miss the Jim Leonhard defense? Absolutely. Because this year seemed a lot of more like the Packers, the bend don't break bullshit. Whereas Jim Leonhard's defenses were very playing downhill and aggressive, but we also kind of saw that fading out last year already. But again, for this season, yeah, you go 7-5. Would have been nice to contend for the West, sure. But in terms of the big picture, I don't hate this. Again, it just proves on how much of a dumpster fire Luke Fickell was left with all these recruits who, I mean, for all intents and purposes, I mean, they were very much left in the late 1900s with the same offense they were playing.
Mm-hmm.
And the college game has gone so far away from that as a whole that aside from Iowa, you've got to kind of go to the new standard. And for so long, it was, that was the Wisconsin way. The Wisconsin way. Well, the Wisconsin way was starting to fail. And
big time.
You can argue, about the academic standards and all that crap that prevents transfers and prevents different recruiting. I'm not going to go down that path because I think you can still. I mean, first of all, for high schools can very easily fudge a GPA. High school GPA has very little standard for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to throw in ACT, SAT, whatever, but so many institutions and so many even high schools are kind of even going away from that at this point. So I don't put much on that as much as some people do.
Right.
But at the same time, I think you just need to be recruiting. You need to change how you're recruiting. And I think we are going to start seeing that here with Luke Fickell. I know that he kind of took a year to kind of get his feet underneath him at Cincinnati. And that's what happens when you completely change what you're going to be doing offensively. Defensively, it is a very similar scheme. But offensively, you go from ground and pound where you had like 4 tight ends at the field sometimes to the dairy raid or the air raid, whatever you want to call it. And you're going to have, you have an offensive line not built for pass blocking who struggled. You have a quarterback room who is, as a whole, not really recruited for this system and is a totally different type of passer. You have wide receivers who are more possession guys. You don't have a true burner like you need in that kind of an offense. So I think things are going to start changing quite significantly starting next season, starting the season after. And for that matter, I think they have to. Because with the expanded Big Ten, where you're kind of going to go away from the division model, and yeah, there's an expanded playoff, so it goes from 4 to 12, but you also don't have, you had to be in the top 2 to be a Big Ten championship game, which Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Washington, all going to have something to say about that. I mean, we just named three teams who realistically had or still have playoff aspirations for this season. And if shit really hits the fan, Ohio State really could make it too. So that's, you really have four playoff type teams that recruit very well, play at a very high level. God damn it. But play at a very high level as well. So it's not, you've got to keep up with the times. Is my ultimate point.
Yep.
And I think Wisconsin's finally in a position to do that.
We're going to find out.
That's the most important thing. Even if this doesn't work, which I think it will, I want to be very clear on that. I believe enough in the Luke Fickell method. Even if he's not the offensive guy, that's Phil Longo. I believe in the general gist of what he's trying to do. And Chris McIntosh, the AD, saying, hey, the Wisconsin way wasn't really working out long term. So we need to try something different. And I respect the hell out of that, because for that matter, we're seeing the results immediately with the hockey team already. They hired a non-Wisconsin guy and broke the mold on that. And you went from a team that struggled so mightily last year to now has been a top 5 team in the NCAA, including had a stint as number 1 in NCAA. Men's program. The women's program's always been good. Like we don't even talk about them. The volleyball program's always been good. But basketball is really kind of like the last holdout with Greg Gard, and for that matter, I don't think he's been in position to necessarily be canned. Even in their off year, you're the NIT runner-up,
right,
last year, which is not the standard for Wisconsin, but I don't think it's fireworthy yet either.
No, not quite yet.
I think the message has been sent where you have to either go or struggle or, you're gone. Yep. But real quick on the basketball train, I had a couple of things to mention. First and foremost, the ESPN did an article today for ESPN Plus subscribers where it was talking about the power ranking the states by amount of NCAA tournament wins since 1985. Wisconsin tied for 18th with Illinois at 57 NCAA tournament wins, with between Green Bay having 1 in the men's side. Marquette had, obviously they've been very successful. The Badgers have been very successful. Even a pretty decent, I believe I counted 3 for UW Milwaukee in the mid-2000s. So tied for 18th in the country. As a whole, I think that's very impressive.
Yeah, still a ways out. I mean, we're one behind Washington at 17. And the top state Florida's at 10 with 92, and then no one's touching North Carolina.
No. That's a hard
244 tournament wins since 85. But when you have 2 of the best programs in the history of college basketball.
And consistent year in, year out, too.
Yeah.
Even at down years, around a 32 appearance.
Yeah, right here. Duke alone has more tournament wins since 85 than 41 entire states.
Jesus.
And North Carolina is number 2 on the Division I list with 96. Duke was number 1 with 102.
Wow. That's wild. Again, and that goes to, 2 great coaches and in turn successors as well.
Yep.
But 2 incredible coaches, Roy Williams and Coach K. Do you know where Virginia was ranked on that list? I'm just pulling it back up now. I had it off earlier.
Virginia.
I feel like they had to be the top 5. I have it up here as well. Kentucky was 2nd. California just has so many schools. Virginia. Kansas 4, Michigan
16.
5.
Virginia is 16.
Really?
Yep.
That's pretty shocking to me. Well, I guess when you consider, I guess I forget how many schools in these states some of these schools have. Like Indiana has Indiana, Purdue, Butler, and Notre Dame. Michigan has the big two. Kansas has Wichita State and Kansas. California has, holy shit, a bunch of them. Virginia not having more than that. I guess I'm a little surprised, but I mean, really, I feel like Virginia's really only been really good in the mid 2000s. Richmond had their noise. George Mason, VCU, but it's like those smaller schools that I would think that kind of would have added up. That's where I was thinking, like, yeah, Virginia's been really good. Virginia Tech's probably had a run or two as well, but yeah, these other schools like George Mason, VCU have made a couple runs. Richmond's been pretty okay. They're a perennial tournament team. I'd have loved to see tournament appearances versus tournament wins for this list.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Because I feel like when you throw that in, especially for a lot of these like small mid-majors, I think that kind of gets it maybe a little bit closer. Although North Carolina's got like a whole bunch of them to add in too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, North Carolina has, aside from Duke and UNC, has NC State, Wake Forest, Charlotte, Davidson, UNC Asheville, North Carolina A&T, UNC Wilmington. Those are all schools that make the tournament on a pretty regular basis. I mean, those are teams like, yeah, you write them off in your bracket. They're the 15 versus 2 or 16 versus 1. But still worth mentioning.
Still making it. Yeah.
I gotta see where Maryland is on this list. I'm so curious. Because they also threw in DC on the list.
Maryland is tied with Iowa at 21.
I love that. Because obviously the Terrapins. But you got to throw in UMBC. They have one. But a very still impressive one nevertheless.
Still one.
Anyway. So the Badgers are fresh off of Badger basketball is fresh off of a tournament win in their what tournament did they play in? The Fort Myers tip-off. They had beaten Virginia 65-41, came back against SMU 69-61 on Wednesday the 22nd, and just pounded Western Illinois 71-49 to have a pretty healthy November schedule. They go 5-2 for the month of November. Their only losses coming to Tennessee and Providence. They do have a pretty big game coming up this weekend against Marquette, who is third in the nation.
Tough stretch coming up here.
Marquette has one loss of the season, which was to Purdue in the Maui Invitational, the All-State Maui Invitational. They took down number 1 ranked Kansas 73-59 and lost to Purdue 78-75. And to get that frustration out, they came back, won 93-56 over Southern University. So huge game for Marquette as well to kind of continue their trek here. Did want to give a quick shout out here to the UW Green Bay men and women for that matter, as the alma mater. The Green Bay men have already matched their season win total this year compared to last year. And we've seen some impressive games. They fall tonight to Purdue Fort Wayne 75-71. They covered their spread of 11.5. But to me, I think the most impressive win, first of all, they win 54-53 on Monday the 20th in that Montana tournament that they were in. Went to overtime, had to come back a couple times. But they were a double-digit dog there. But this game that happened Saturday afternoon, they beat St. Thomas of Minnesota 64-51. And that was their third win of the season. And this is a St. Thomas Tommies team that has returned basically their whole roster from last year. This is also a team that beat Green Bay by 20 points last season. And on Saturday, not once did the Phoenix trail.
Yeah.
And
for a single minute.
That goes on to just point out again how a new coach can change college basketball, how a new roster turnover can change the landscape. I've watched a handful of their games now on top of just doing the radio stuff. This team is so much night and day different than last season. And it stops and starts with Noah Reynolds. Now, in this game on Saturday, he only scored 7 points, but had 6 assists to lead the team, had 6 of their 12 assists, had 6 rebounds, and played the most minutes. It wasn't even close. He played 36 minutes of the 40. And you can tell how much he means to the team when you watch them. And if you watch them and you don't know what I'm talking about, watch them for a game. And you will see number 21 everywhere on the court and making the big shots, taking the big shots, finding the right passes, doing everything right. Even in tonight's loss, I believe he led all scorers with he was second in scoring for the whole game. He led Green Bay with 16 points. Just an incredible athlete. So I got to give him his due. And Coach Wicks, for that matter, too, as the coach. Again, just making guys believe. And I don't know if you've seen it, Dylan, but for those of our listeners who haven't, go to Facebook, go to YouTube, go to whatever outlet, and watch the first piece, I think, of 6, the in-season documentary they're making called 362. It's like a 10-minute video, and it kind of channels Green Bay's really, it's cliche, but the rise from the ashes, where they were the 362nd ranked program in Division I last year by basically every metric, which was second to last, which now actually would be last because that other, I think Hartford dropped out. So they were dead last in all of college basketball. As of the first Ken Palm ratings that came out over the weekend, first in-season ones, they've already gone up 30-some spots to 332, I believe, which still is a lot of way to go because the goal for Coach Wicks is to get to a top 100 program. But that is an incredible, incredible step up in 7 games.
Yes, it is.
So, and that includes the game tonight. Like I said, they did lose. They did cover. They are back in action on Saturday, taking on Milwaukee, who also 3-4, has had some big time opponents as well. They do have a non-counter win over what counts for Milwaukee, but quote unquote non-counter win over Stout. They lost to Providence, got creamed by Colorado, came back to beat Luther, have lost against Stetson and beat Siena, and then lost to Southern Miss. Some very big opponents playing the Milwaukee Panthers as well on the men's side. So did want to make mention of them as well because I don't usually talk about them. Felt like I had to because why not? But usually don't for obvious reasons.
Go Phoenix.
Yes, go Phoenix. With that said, got to mention the Green Bay women here. Huge weekend. Again, their second top 25 ranked win. That coming against Washington State over the weekend in the Cancun Challenge. And really, this started off on Thursday of last week. They beat UMass 85-52, which was a formality, essentially. They ended up falling to Maryland, but had, the final score doesn't really tell the story of that game. It was 68-59, but that was a game that Green Bay led or was within 4 or 5 points for the majority of that game. So hanging with a Big Ten team. And then in the final day of the tournament, Saturday last week, they go and beat number 23 ranked Washington State 59-48 in a convincing, dominating win that I don't believe that they trailed that game either. And if they did, it was very early on. That was a very Green Bay. They did trail after one quarter. It was 14-10 for the first quarter. Green Bay would outscore them 20-11 after that. They did lose the third quarter, if you will, 14-13, and a final quarter closeout 16-9. But just, again, when you talk about Green Bay basketball, we're talking about a program that contends with these big schools, has built a resume that, as of right now, and as always, it's an estimate, it's a guess, but per ESPN's bracketology for the women's side, they would be an at-large bid and already receiving early votes in the top 25 poll. Did not make the top 25. I believe they got 7 votes, which seemed a little low to me, but
votes are votes.
Votes are votes, which typically for Green Bay, in at least the last 10 years, has been they don't receive votes till like January, February. And those all matter. Those all count.
Mm-hmm.
But to be getting votes in November, this is a balanced team. This is a very Kevin Borseth-esque team.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very, again, you get 10.8 points from Kelly Genke, 10.2 from Cassie Schultz, 9.7 from both Natalie McNeil and Maddie Schreiber, 7.2 from Bailey Butler, 6.3 from Jasmine Kondrakowicz and Jenna Geyer. Natalie Anderson has 5.8 points. And these are all girls playing about 20-some minutes a game. And I don't even know how many deep I went there. It's a lot of math real quick, but that's a very long list. I mean, you're talking about a team that is realistically 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 deep, playing over
very
20
balanced.
minutes a game.
It's a very balanced roster.
And all, it's kind of one of those, and I don't want to say this because I'm sure the Green Bay coaching staff doesn't want to hear it this way, and I mean this better than how I'm about to say it, but this is one of those where a jack of all trades, master of none, but excellent at everything type teams that Green Bay has been built on. They don't have a true number one scorer on any given game. I mean, they do have girls. Any girl on this team can probably go out and get 15, 20 a game if they want to. But they play within the system. They play within their team. And again, even the rebounds. Again, 8 deep, getting 3 or more rebounds a game.
Mm-hmm.
You have 8 deep, getting at least, actually 10 deep, getting an over an assist per game.
Mm-hmm.
Just, again, incredible stats from this program. And once again, on their way to potentially another, you look at, they were unanimous preseason pick to win the Big Ten, or the Horizon League, excuse me. And for good reason. They returned basically everybody except 2 girls.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 very, you lose Sydney Levy, you lose Megan Pingle, who's now on the coaching staff. But it just continues to be rinse, wash, repeat.
Right.
Green Bay way.
Go Phoenix.
Go Phoenix. All right, Dylan, one other team in Green Bay that we have to talk about before we wrap this episode up, that being the Green Bay Packers, who have won 2 straight games, have won 3 of their last 4, and which leads us to the third assignment I had for you this week, which was asking if this team are contenders or pretenders, if they are building something good, or if this is just another false hope type rally. It very well could be both. I'm not ruling that out either, but I wanted to we'll go as quick as we can on this. Your initial thoughts on that question?
Well, my initial thought is I have no idea. Right? If you would have asked me this 4 weeks ago, I would have said, don't ask stupid questions, Eric. Come on. But, 3 out of the last 4 against, not like the best teams in the league, but not
top
joke
quality
teams.
Opponents.
Yeah. Beat the Rams. I should say beat the Rams. Pounded the Rams. Lost a close one to the Steelers. Beat the Chargers in a close one, and then should have won by more against the Lions, but pulled it off. Lions were an 8-2 team.
Mm-hmm.
Not a bad team. That's first time I haven't had to say that about the Lions in a long time.
Right.
But, right now I still want to say 50-50, but looking ahead, you got our next 5 games, you were at New York, which should be a victory.
Mm-hmm.
You're at you're hosting Tampa Bay,
Mm-hmm.
which should be a victory.
Yep.
You're at Carolina, which should be a victory.
Yep. Minnesota's a toss-up.
Minnesota's going to be a tough one. It's going to be a real tough one. And then you're hosting the Bears, which should be a victory. So realistically, we're looking at winning 4 out of the next 5. Should be. And that puts us at 9-7.
9-8. 17 games now. You forgot the Chiefs game.
Yes, you're right. I forgot the Chiefs game. I skipped over the Chiefs game. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a tough one. I don't know if we pull that one off, then I'm going to say we're contenders now. I'm
going to add that if they beat the Chiefs, depending on how they beat the Chiefs, I want to be very clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
If they beat the Chiefs and do it rather convincingly, I'm going to be one of the most delusional Packer fans.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but I also do think that, like you said, just look at the schedule, that kind of lines up more on the contenders and figuring something out versus pretenders, which, for what it's worth, I mean, we talk about, not caring if this is a Super Bowl team, not caring if this is a playoff team, but for what it's worth, we've always talked about finding out if Jordan Love's the guy or if he's not. And that's been the most important goal of this season.
Yes. And
with that in mind, statistically speaking, Jordan Love has been one of the top quarterbacks in the last 4 weeks over that span of 3 of 4, where you can argue that he really is showing a lot of growth. And I think that's very important to mention, where even if this team doesn't make the playoffs, as long as you get that growth, which we finally really are seeing in spades. The Steelers game was kind of the biggest part of that, but we even saw it a lot against Detroit, where that growth is finally kind of coming to fruition. Obviously, time is a flat circle. Through 11 games, has identical stats, like down to completions, yards, touchdowns, that Aaron Rodgers had his first year starting, which is the biggest coincidence in the world, but impressive nevertheless. But again, statistically speaking, turkey leg aside, Jordan Love, his completion percentage over these last 4 games is up to 65%. He has gotten a career high at 300 some odd yards passing, which had not been done since 2021 by the Packers. He has gone from 231 yards to 276 yards per game, 8 touchdowns and 2 interceptions in that stretch of the 4 games. Better decision-making, a little bit better passing itself.
His completion percentage is creeping up.
Yep, 58 compared to 65. 15-yard pass. This is the biggest thing. I'm assuming this is completion, but I think this might actually just be in terms of balls thrown. 15-yard or more passes in air yards. Only 35%. Now is up to 65. So you've seen growth out of the receivers. Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, kind of those big 2. Christian Watson having a huge Thanksgiving game is exactly what you need. It's starting from that first play, which is, I know I talked about it, I think I don't know who I talked about 2 weeks ago. I think it was Sean. But the idea of moving on from Christian Watson just because the numbers are down this year is absolutely absurd to me, because we see why you need him around. He opens up everything else underneath for everybody else, and there's going to be games where he just eats. And so Thursday was one of those games where he just eats. And you need that. Offensive line's been playing better as well, allowing that to occur. And doing so, I think the most impressive thing of this Detroit win wasn't Jordan Love's play, which it was great, but it was the fact that he did it without Aaron Jones.
Mm-hmm.
and having to rely on a backfield of A.J. Dillon and Patrick Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
On a short week, Patrick Taylor coming from the New England practice squad back to Green Bay for another stint with the Packers. So really the only running backs you had in the room to start the week was A.J. Dillon. And A.J. Dillon, traditionally speaking, has struggled in the role of RB1. And statistically, if you look at the box score from this last game, you'd probably still say he struggled. I disagree. I think he played very well situationally. He was 14 carries, 43 yards, with a long of 17. He also added 3 catches for 38 yards, including a long of 22. So, again, just all sorts of, again, a very team win. And so I'm not ready to say contenders, like for playoffs for this year. I don't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I am beginning to see this, again, the growth of, okay, maybe there is something actually here that very well could go into next season and beyond the season after that. I know for our listeners' sake, I'm going to be very upfront with this, is I've been very vocal on if Jordan Love isn't the guy that you need to move on sooner rather than later than giving him 2 years. And I still agree with that as a whole, just based on how contracts in the NFL are. I want to be clear, I was not writing the guy off. But just from a conversational sake of, do you stay where you are or do you move on and get a younger, cheaper guy and do what the 49ers have had? It's a great conversation to have. It's an important conversation to have. But for the sake of the current team, I've been incredibly impressed, and I love watching Jordan Love play. Because on top of, the results the last 4 weeks, even the loss against Pittsburgh, the guy plays with both, and this is so contradictory, it doesn't really make sense, again, unless you see it. He plays with such a poise, but a swagger.
Mm-hmm.
A confidence, yet calm.
Yep.
And that is something that you need your quarterback to have. And you don't get that from every NFL quarterback. And the fact that he has that, like, you put him on the field with the other 10 guys around him. He is, I mean, obviously we all know, but if you took the numbers off of him, he is very clearly the leader and the quarterback.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is possibly even more important. Like, again, we're seeing the growth as a player. That's great. But that's also an incredible point to look at when you talk about the growth. I mean, this is a guy who, after his first season, thought he might have to start right away because of all the retirement trade rumors, whatever. He had one season where he was QB3, which was just truly a learning year with COVID and everything else going on in the world, too.
Yep.
And here we are. So I give him a lot of credit.
Right.
In terms of this game for this week against the Chiefs, I don't think these are the same big bad Chiefs that have been around the NFL the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree.
I do not want to write off Taylor Swift magic because there's a lot of rumors that she is going to be in town for this one. Sunday Night Football, Simone Biles and Taylor Swift are buddies. So I'm not writing that off. I'm going to speak now and get back to December on this because 22 guys will be on the field at any point. You see what I'm doing?
Yeah, and I'd appreciate it if you knocked it off.
This team has to be fearless. They are going to be seeing a lot of red.
I'm going to mute you.
I want to see how many I could get in.
You got enough.
But for what it's worth, Matt LaFleur is undefeated as head coach of the Green Bay Packers in December. This game will be December 3rd.
Let's keep that train rolling.
This is a very beatable Chiefs team. I think we're going to see some sparks fly in this game. And
anything else need to sneak in?
Yeah, very well could be a Jordan Love story.
I'm hanging up now.
All right, that's the last one that I have for now. I really can't think of any more. But
Goodness.
6 point spread in the game. Your quick picks on this one, Dylan. Chiefs by 6, by the way. I want to be clear on that.
Yeah, my head is telling me to take the Chiefs. My heart is telling me to take Packers.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Packers cover. I still think they're going to lose. But I will say that they cover.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Because, again, you can go with the delusional Packer fan that this team's on the rise and get a little too swept into it. Could be a cruel summer coming up. But no, in all seriousness, I'm going to pick the Chiefs to cover just because I think we're going to see it swing the other way a little bit. I think, Packers fans and the Packers as a team are riding really high right now, and kind of looking forward to that 5-game finish of the season. But I do think there is. I won't be shocked if Green Bay comes out and wins this either.
Neither would I.
I just. Again, it's kind of one of those that can be right or happy type things, and I'm feeling a little fearless, so I'm still gonna go with the Chiefs. It would be great folklore if the Packers won, though. Maybe we'll have an epiphany on Jordan Love.
I'm about to hang up.
Okay, we're out of the woods now. We'll have a complete blank space just to end the episode. And I do want to ask you, what are you rooting for the upcoming week?
Packers got a big game. I'm going to root for them. Since we didn't touch on them, I'm going to say go Bucks. And I'm so hoping I don't have to see too much of Taylor Swift during the game this weekend.
Oh, Dylan, look what you made me do. You just got to shake it off. It's going to happen. If she's there, it's going to happen. I'm fully embracing it, if you couldn't tell. But
yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to echo that. I'm excited. Get a good week of kind of Packers hype. It's fun to be a Packer fan again. It's not struggling. So I'm going to embrace that for the week. Also, go Bucks. And I'm going to give you a chance here to pick a bar for the week as well.
Oh, gosh. I haven't been out to any bars in a while. Never been there, but I'm going to shout out Lucky Dogs in Neenah. Another bar owned by my friend, or partially owned by my friend Nick. It is on Green Bay Ave here in Neenah.
Yeah, let me pull this up, Dylan. It is 157 South Green Bay Road, Neenah, Wisconsin, 54956. They're open, and you can call them if you want to place an order, 920-727-0415. 4.3 star reviews on Google out of 204 reviews. A lot of people talking about it's got a wedding banquet space. People talking about, let's see. Great atmosphere, great food, which I'm assuming at least similar to Willie Beeman's.
I would think.
Which has incredible food. So, great crowd, apparently. Pool, darts, Packers. Big parking lot for buses and limos if you're into that.
Mm-hmm.
A good brat. They do a Memorial Day car show. So, I'm going to say great reviews all the way around. I also have obviously not been there, but that's one to definitely check out next time we're in the Fox Valley.
Agreed.
All right, Dylan. For Shauna, Ramsey, Sean, who participated this week, Justin, who was doing his coaching thing, I'm Eric. That's Dylan. Signing off. Episode 136 in the books. We're out. See ya.
Peace.